In Exodus chapter 33 and verse 20, God is replying to Moses with these words. But he said, "You cannot see my face, for no man can see me and live." There have been quite a few people throughout time that have claimed to see God personally and to hear him speak to them personally. The vast majority of those were either mentally disturbed or simply false teachers trying to lead people after themselves. But not all. And there's those exceptions that we're going to be talking about this morning for a while. And let's start with Moses. Here in the same verses that I just read, we'll pick up the context. Moses is with God on the mountain. And Moses says to God, "I pray, show me your glory." And he said, "I myself will make my goodness pass before you, and will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show compassion on whom I will show compassion." But he said, "You cannot see my face, for no man can see my face and live." Then the Lord said, "Behold, there is a place by me, and you shall stand there on the rock. And it will come about, while my glory is passing by, that I will put you in the cleft of the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen." Can you imagine that scene? We'd have to imagine it because no one else ever had a scene like that before, no ordinary man. But Moses, unlike most people, talked to God personally. Moses argued with God. Moses interceded with God for the people of Israel. We're certainly not told what God's back looked like here. But we know the effect seeing God had on Moses, because when Moses came down off the mountain, his face was glowing. Apparently it continued to glow because he would wear a veil over his face, except when he was in the presence of God, when he was in the presence of the people wearing the veil. But Moses is not the only person that had a close encounter with God, though of the people we're going to be reading about, Moses was probably the one that had the closest, if we can look at presence, the closest of all. Later, God said that Moses was the only one that saw his form. Isaiah tells us in Isaiah chapter 6, when he was called by God, the circumstances of that calling. He says, "In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, lofty and exalted, with the train of his robe filling the temple. Seraphim stood above him, each having 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called out to another and said, 'Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The earth is full of his glory.' The foundations of the threshold trembled at the voice of him who called out, while the temple was filling with smoke. And then I said, 'Woe is me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts.'" It may be that possibly Isaiah was recalling where God had said to Moses that no one could see his face and live, and he may have thought just because he saw this vision of God that was enough for him to die. But one of the seraphim came to him with a burning coal in his hand, which he had taken from the altar with tongs, and he touched my mouth with it and said, "Behold, this has touched your lips. Your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is forgiven." Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I, send me." You would think maybe someone that frightened might say, "Send somebody else." You might recall that Moses said that. That was before he saw the presence of the Lord, though. But here is Isaiah going to go out on the difficult mission as a prophet of God after seeing this remarkable scene. Now, the words here do not tell us that Isaiah saw a vision. But the next close encounter with God, Ezekiel specifically says he saw a vision, and the vision he sees is remarkably like this one, as is one other that we'll touch on before we get to the point of our lesson this morning. In Ezekiel chapter 1, if you've taken the time to read that remarkable chapter. And if you, like me, have read some of the weird things that people have construed from this, from beings from outer space, if they said out of space, we could take that to be true, but they're not beings from outer space. Ezekiel says, it came about in the 30th year on the 5th day of the 4th month, while I was by the river Chebar among the exiles, the heavens were opened and I saw visions of God. You go back later and read all the rest of the chapter if you want. We're not going to deal with the cherubim, which are unlike those little pink naked babies with wings on their backs that people see on Valentine's cards, but rather are awesome beings that would probably scare you to death if you were in the presence of them. But anyway, we're going to go to verse 26 where we're going to read about his close encounter with God. Now, above the expanse, there was a crystal expanse that he had seen above these cherubim. Now, above the expanse that was over their heads, there was something resembling a throne, like lapis lazuli, which would be a dark, rich blue in appearance. On that which resembled a throne high up was a figure with the appearance of a man. Now, this one verse tells you something about looking at something you've never seen before and describing it to people. Notice that he doesn't say he saw a throne, or he saw a man, or he saw lapis lazuli. He said, I saw something like this, and something like that, and something like that. When you're describing something that you've never seen before, you have to use things that people have seen before to give them an idea of what you're looking at, and that's what he was doing. Then I noticed from the appearance of his loins and upward something like glowing metal that looked like fire all around within it. And from the appearance of his loins and downward I saw something like fire, and there was a radiance around him. As the appearance of the rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day, so was the appearance of the surrounding radiance. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell on my face and heard a voice speaking. Anyone in the Bible who came into the presence of God in this capacity seems to have had the same effect on them. In great awe and fear, they fell down before this almighty being. Again, this is a vision, which means it's something that is like and not something that is actual. And so whether he is seeing anything that resembled the actual God, we don't know here. But again, very similar to Isaiah's. The Apostle John had a similar vision, and much of it sounds like Ezekiel's. There are little differences here and there, and we're not going to go into those this morning. We're merely wanting to point out some people who had real close encounters with God and the effect on them. In Revelation chapter 4, John describes his close encounter. After these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice which I had heard, like the sound of a trumpet speaking with me, said, Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after these things. Immediately I was in the Spirit. Behold, a throne was standing in heaven, one sitting on the throne. And he who was sitting was like a jasper stone and a sardius in appearance, and there was a rainbow around the throne like an emerald in appearance. Now, having looked up all of these things back when we were in the Revelation class, it's obvious that the stones that are being described here are at least vague in the sense of us knowing exactly which stones they were then. And so the people who are translating our Bibles have tried the best to give us the closest thing they could get. I understand, though gemstones can vary.